Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this session of 44th Comprehensive Course on Echocardiography. We have with us Dr. S.K. Parashar sir to talk about the congenital cyanotic heart disease. We had a session on previously sequential analysis along with acyanotic congenital heart disease, and today we are going to have a session on cyanotic congenital heart disease. As you know, Dr. Parashar was a past president of Indian Academy of Echocardiography and Cardiological Society of Echocardiography. He is a founder for Indian Academy of Echo. With these few words, let me hand over a mic to Colonel Parashar sir for his talk on congenital cyanotic heart disease. Sir, it's all yours. Unmute yourself, sir. You are muted. Please share your slides also.
The slides are visible now.
They are visible
So
also.
today, as Dr. Gupta said, we only discuss what is a common cyanotic congenital heart diseases, and that to what you encounter in the slightly elderly or middle, or say the patients in the age group of 10, 15, 20 or so, because there are a huge number of cyanotic heart disease which we see in infants, and possibly they are in the domain of a very experienced pediatric cardiologist also. We'll discuss the common what we see in our day-to-day practice. On this slide you will see very repeatedly showing you LV, RV, LA, RA. Then this next slide is nothing connected with the talk, but what we say that always take a various modified apical views. You can see multiple ASDs also. So don't be satisfied with only one lesion, but that is a sort of a modified apical view. I always take the IAS, and you can see two ASDs or so. Now coming to the topic properly, so you know this cyanosis, what we are dealing with is usually a central cyanosis in which there is a right to left shunting, and unless there is a right to left shunting, there will not be any central cyanosis. The other cyanosis, which are less commonly seen nowadays, is a differential cyanosis, because by this time the child usually undergoes some intervention also. So sometimes when there is a patent ductus arteriosus with a pulmonary hypertension, you see a cyanosis of the toes, while the upper limb, the upper arm is not cyanosed that much as compared to the lower limb. That is known as the differential cyanosis. Same thing, sometime a TGA with a plus PD and pulmonary hypertension, they have a cyanosis of the arms, nails also, but less in the lower part also. But the most commonest differential cyanosis, if we see now, is more of a patent ductus arteriosus with an increased pulmonary vascular resistance, produces cyanosis in the toes as compared to the other ones. But what we are dealing with today is mostly a right to left shunting. Now, when do you say cyanosis? Is usually there are various definitions, but one of them is that arterial oxygen saturation less than 85%, but barely visible when there are less than 75% or so. That is why, as I will let you know just now, seeing an arterial saturation is a part of our any study of a congenital heart disease. So there are certain nomenclatures which you will have to know certain days with the practice. One is the normal, what we see, a situs solitus, normal connection, and levocardia, in which the cardiac apex is to the left, and all other relationships are normal, and cardiac apex is to the left. Similarly, dextrocardia, the cardiac apex to the right, and there is situs solitus. That means that in dextrocardia, you have to start from the right-sided heart because the apex is to the right. Then a situs inversus as a dextrocardia. That means the body organs are reversed. For example, liver may be on the left side, the spleen may be on the right side, and apex is to the right. Whenever there is a word dextrocardia, that means the apex is to the right. Then situs inversus and levocardia. That means abdominal and thoracic structures reversed in minor pene, but apex is to the left. So whenever you see levocardia, that means apex is to the left, and the situs solitus is a normal connection, and situs inversus is a sort of a reversal of the various structures. This so that whenever we write a report, we always should write whether it is a levocardia, dextrocardia, whether it is situs solitus or what. That we normally see from a subcostal view, as might have been shown to you. So now, as I told you, that pulse oximeter is a part of the reporting of a congenital heart disease because it is very important. All of you know the importance of ECG, X-ray, and echocardiogram. And I don't know, somewhere I read that now it is recommended to use the middle finger rather than using the second finger also. And whenever we check, and sometimes we see the reports in which they have written that the oxygen saturation in the fingers are so much and the toes are so much, so that you may not miss any mild cyanosis if you are using a pulse oximeter. So there should be a pulse oximeter always in your pocket or always in your department, and you report the value also when you give a final report. So now then I think, I don't know whether the same batch I told you that this saline contrast echocardiography is also a very important technique in these cases, but a history and clinical examination, of course, you see when you see a cyanosis, as I said, try to see whether it is a central or differential. Peripheral, we see what is known as a Reynolds phenomenon seen at a high altitude, but we are not concerned with this. Always report the clubbing of the nails. And then a heart failure, that is, in other words, what are the signs or significance of the heart failure is their manifestation differ from the adults, and they are very high risk cases, and they should be immediately sent to a pediatric center for various other manifestations. For example, whenever these are high risk patients or features of a heart failure in infants, a poor feeding and a failure to thrive, that is one indication that the patient has got a significant cardiac lesion. A respiratory distress with a tachypnea more than about 45, and unexplained tachycardia more than about 120. By unexplained, I mean suppose a patient is having high fever, that is an explained one, but otherwise tachycardia, tachypnea, excessive perspiration. Sometimes the mother will give a history that whenever the child is fed, the child gets excessive respiration or anytime they strain. And of course, the pulmonary wheeze and RALs also. So these are some of these undue features of a heart failure, including pericardial effusion and cardiomegaly. So whenever any of these things are present, the child should be immediately sent to a pediatric center. That means that the patient has got a high risk case, and these are some of the signs of a heart failure. Then a basic important point in any cyanotic or any condition, leave aside cyanotic heart disease, acyanotic or anything, you must have a basic knowledge of anatomy, physiology. Now, unless you know what do you want to see, for example, suppose we say a fellow's trilogy or a pentology or anything, unless you know what are the basic anatomy and physiology of that situation, you will not able to diagnose or so. As we proceed, we'll let you know a good knowledge of hemodynamics. What is the period of the blood flow? So the anxiety, the sedation is very important. So besides, remember always make a short note in your notebook at what is the basic anatomy of this particular disease, just 4 or 5 or so, and then you have a good sedation with a tricloryl. We normally give about 50 milligram per kilogram body weight. We take it in a syringe without a needle and just push it into the patient's mouth or so. And remember, always look for other lesions and never be satisfied with only one lesion. If you have found an ASD, you should not be happy that we have found the ASD. See everything and try to, because many of these congenital cardiac lesions have got multiple lesions, always see for other as a normal practice. And once you see a cyanotic heart disease, you must demonstrate a right to left shunt. Because unless you demonstrate a right to left shunt, it doesn't satisfy the diagnosis of a cyanotic heart disease. For example, when we say sedation, now this was a patient who was crying. Some of the patient as soon as you put a jelly on the chest, they start crying. And during crying, you see the PA pressure was about 153 at that time. One example of a poor sedation, 153. When the child was sedated, although it was still high, but from 153, it came down to 112. That means they fall by about 42 millimeters. So that means you should be very, very gentle, very patient. You must be very patient when you get a congenital heart disease. The young person is not the worst age for them to do is up to the age of 2 years, 3 years or so. So that is why when we do a congenital heart disease, that is what we do. We call them at a time when there are other adult patients out there. So that suppose the patient needs a sedation also, then we give it to them and meanwhile do another cases. Remember, before giving what we tell the patients is let the child come with any dress with the front open, so that we don't have to struggle by removing the dresses also. And before giving a sedation, if the child does not have that particular type of dress, remove the dress, cover the child with a blanket, and then you give a sedation. Not that once you are giving a sedation, then you start trying to remove the dress of the patient so that the patient gets up again also, and your whole exercise becomes wasted. So come with a front open, not possible, then come with a sort of a cover, a blanket, and before sedation, you give this. When we ask the patient to, if the child is on a feed, we tell them to bring a bottle of a milk or a water with the patient, so that sometimes the child has to be sedated, and they can be sedated either by the atmosphere or by a trichloryl or so. Then, as I said, the saline contrast echocardiography, despite the era of a color Doppler echocardiography, plays an important role in showing a right to left shunt. Now, the basic principle of this is a contrast echocardiography is that you take a certain amount of a glucose saline in a syringe, uh, depending upon the age of the patient, connect it with the another 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 syringe or so. And normally, if the child is slightly bigger, then take about 9 ml of the glucose saline, 0.5 ml is a little bit of an air, and we use a left antecubital vein. Because sometimes if you have to show demonstrate a sort of a left SVC going to the coronary sinus, then of course we have to use the left arm. So that is, we preferably use the left arm, and we make the liquid glucose saline one syringe to another syringe to another syringe by 1 2 1 2, so that it becomes slightly milky white and becomes well sort of a mixed with air, and then you inject it into a vein. And with a cannula should always be there for various reasons. And when this cannula is there, when you have mixed the two air and the two by moving from one syringe to other syringe, another the first one, it becomes slightly air filled and becomes a sort of a slightly milky white, and then you inject intravenously. Then what happens? Now, the as expected, when you give in the upper limb, the first of all, it will go to the right atrium. So this is the right atrium. This is nothing else but a glucose saline microbubbles which are made more prominent by echo. Then they go to the right ventricle. So from the right atrium to the right ventricle, and then they go to the pulmonary circulation. And in a pulmonary circulation, because they are of a larger size than the pulmonary capillaries, they get destroyed in the pulmonary circulation. So when they get destroyed, then nothing is seen on the left side of the image, because this is, unless it bypasses the pulmonary circulation, you will not see anything here. So you see a normal contrast echo, a normal RA, normal RV, and normal LA and normal LV, in the sense that there is no contrast in it because it gets destroyed in the pulmonary circulation. So this is a normal one. Now you see here, now you see there is a marked RVH present, parasternal long axis view. So whenever you see a contrast, you see from where it goes and at what time it goes. Now here it is very evident the patient has got a sort of a large VSD, there is significant RVH. So we expect a shunt to come from right to left, but this is only for demonstration purposes. Now see, here what we have done, we have injected glucose saline, goes to the right side of the heart, and then it goes to the left side of the heart. So that means there is a right to left, a shunt at this lesion or so. And you see, again, I'll show you again, you see, this is the right ventricle, this is the left ventricle, and here you see this glucose saline goes from, fills the right ventricle, and from there it goes to the right ventricle, left ventricle, indicative of a right to left shunt from a ventricular level. Now similarly, take this patient. First concentrate on this side. This is LV, this is RV, this is RA, this is LA. Now you see there is a large RV RA. Now here what we have done, when we have given the glucose saline, it go from the RA, it goes directly to the RA. You see LA. So there is a right to left shunt. Now if the shunt would not have been present, none of the left-sided structures would have been opacified also. So here you see it goes to the right atrium. From the right atrium, you see a part of the left atrium gets opacified, and so that means it is a right to left shunt at the atrial level, because first it goes to the RV, RA, and then it goes to the LA. So these are some of the, we have numerous examples, but these are some of the common basic examples to show a right to left shunt, and we in between we'll go on showing some more images or so. So the first thing we see, which is very commonly seen in our age group, also in the younger individuals, is a Fallot tetralogy, one of the very common cyanotic heart disease. Now, now we always, like any other thing, eh, we always see for 2D anatomic features by 2D imaging. We always see for a color flow mapping to keep the Doppler beam parallel to the flow, and to see for other lesions. Color is followed by a Doppler. So as you know, we have been repeatedly telling you that the sequence of study in any heart disease, whether it's a congenital heart, is 2D color flow mapping, then Doppler. And then we see for a associated lesions or so. So there are in Fallot tetralogy, as it says, tetralogy means that there should be 4 lesions. So one is a ventricular septal defect, which is best seen in parasternal long axis view. Then there is an aortic override, best seen in a parasternal long axis view. Then there is a severe RVOT obstruction, which is seen from a short axis and subcostal, and then right ventricular hypertrophy. The right ventricular hypertrophy is because of the pressure overload on the right ventricle. Say when there is a pulmonary stenosis, so there is a whole load present on the right ventricle. As a result of it, there is a right ventricular hypertrophy. For example, you get a left ventricular hypertrophy in cases of a aortic stenosis. So these are the 4 lesions which we will demonstrate to you just now. Now, this is a normal parasternal long axis view. You see the septum is continuous with the anterior wall of the aorta, and the mitral wall is in direct connection with the posterior wall of the aorta. This is a normal individual this is known as a normal mitral aortic continuity and aortoseptal continuity, that there is a normal connection between the septum and the aorta, and here mitral. So what happens in a fellow tetralogy, as you see, now there is a VSD, correct? And then there is the overriding of the aorta. This is aorta. This whole is the aorta. Part of his aorta is coming from the right ventricle, part is coming on the left ventricle, and this is known as an aortic override. Sometimes it is also known as a biventricular origin of the aorta. Biventricular means it arising both of the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So this is the known as an aortic override. To show you again, this you see here, there is no aortic override. There is just one connection between the aorta and the septum, and you see here you see that this is an aortic override and the aorta is dilated. So you can see two lesions in a parasternal long axis view. You see a ventricular septal defect and an aortic override, which you'll see repeatedly in these cases also. Now, these are seen in many situations, but we are discussing mainly the fellows also. And your image should be so perfect that you don't create a aortic override. So these are the two things. Then now in a short axis view, as you know, this is a normal short axis view. You see this is right atrium, tricuspid wall, right ventricle, a pulmonary wall, and a pulmonary artery. So the third thing was an RVOT obstruction. This RVOT obstruction can be in the infundibular region, just proximal to the pulmonary wall, or it can be valvular or can be combined. So there can be anywhere there can be an obstruction, because that is the third feature of a fellow tetralogy. So we'll show you somewhere just now. And fourth is this, as we show you here again. Now when we come here, you see three things. You see the significant RVH. So in one view, you see a significant RVH coming from here to here, a VSD, and the presence of aortic override. So three lesions are already seen, and this is seen in a short axis view, which follows a fellow tetralogy. So in a summary is this, there is a large mal-aligned non-restrictive VSD. Non-restrictive means that because the pressure between the LV and the RV is almost same or different, so it is a non-restrictive. Restrictive ones are high velocity VSDs. You have seen a large aorta with an aortic override. We will show you RVOT obstruction, and you have seen RVS. So that in one view, you have seen the three lesions which are characterized by fellow tetralogy. So then we come to color flow mapping. It tells you the shunt flow, whether it is right to left to right, or bidirectional. Then, as I told you, it localizes the RVOT obstruction. By this time, you should know that wherever there is a turbulence, that means there is a disease in that particular area. If the turbulence starts from the RVOT proximal side, that means it is a infundibular. When it starts at the valvular level, that means it is a lesion at this. From where the our this this sorry, this, let me drink my water first. From where the turbulence starts, and then it guides Doppler beam parallel to the flow. For example, see here. This is a parasternal long axis view, aortic override, and you see a red flow going from the LV to the RV, and a blue flow coming from the RV to the LV. So this is a bidirectional shunt. So this will tell us, to make more simple, you see here, this is a still image. You see this flow goes from the left ventricle to right ventricle, and this is because it is going towards the transducer. It is of a red color, and it is coming back from the RV to the LV, and because it is away from the transducer, so this becomes blue. So this is known as a bidirectional shunt. That means both right to left and left to right, which is giving rise to this obstruction. So it is the most important hemodynamic determination. So the thing is that the more severe the pulmonary stenosis, the more severe will be the RV obstruction. Say because RV is draining blood into the pulmonary artery. And if there is a pulmonary stenosis, the more strain is always on the proximal chamber. So there is a significant increase in pressure in the right ventricle, as a result of which the RV will show a right to left shunt because it showed a significant increased pressure. Sometimes what is known as a pink fellows tetralogy. A pink fellows tetralogy is one in which all the other lesions are present, but the pulmonary stenosis is so less marked that there is no significant increase in the RV pressure and the flow is still from left to right. So in fundibular 50%, the valvular 20-25, and the mixed it is there. So most of the time we see either a infundibular is most common. Now you see here, now see this patient, you see the pulmonary wall. You see the pulmonary wall is not thickened, well seen, and this is the infundibular region. And here you can see that infundibular region is already getting obstructed. And here you see the flow is coming proximal to the pulmonary wall. This is all flow. This turbulence you are seeing is because of this flow into this turbulent flow, but the origin is from here. So when the origin of the turbulent flow is from here, so it shows it is a sort of a infundibular obstruction because the turbulence starts there. And here you can see that this is a confundibular region and it gets obliterated, and we'll show you more examples of it. As I compare to this is a turbulence starts from the pulmonary wall, and hence this is known as this is a valvular pulmonary stenosis. So you can here to see from where the turbulence starts, and there you put a Doppler beam and you can find this. Sometimes what we do when we are in a doubt, we put a Doppler beam in the in the in the pulse Doppler here to see whether turbulence starts here or not by aliasing, and then we come forward like this. So the main thing is from where it starts. And so there are two examples. And you see, this is now you see a normal. I produce a normal pulmonary wall. You see here in a normal pulmonary wall, you see this is a pulmonary artery, and beyond the pulmonary wall there is nothing. There is nothing in beyond the pulmonary wall. There is only a There is a zoomed view is a pulmonary artery. But here you see in this patient there is a pulmonary wall, and then there is a membrane beyond the pulmonary wall. You see this, where my arrow is there. So that means it is a supravalvular stenosis. You see, you see, if you see this, I'll come back to this again. You see there is nothing beyond the pulmonary valve. And here you see something just beyond the pulmonary wall, which will be seen. And this is the pulmonary wall in fundibular. And you see there is a ridge or a membrane beyond the pulmonary wall, known as a supravalvular pulmonary stenosis. So you must always look like in aortic stenosis, always look in a subaortic region. Here also, see for whole of wherever you want, the whole of the pulmonary artery can be seen. So then we come to the Doppler feature. So you have seen anatomical 4 features. Color flow mapping shows you where is the obstruction, and the Doppler features are there. So it is a low velocity flow. Why? Because there is as you have seen, there is a large VST. The more larger the VST, there is more equalization of the pressure. So in a normal VST, the RV pressures are much less. So the LV pressure is much more. As a result of it, there is a very high velocity flow from left ventricle to the right ventricle. But here, because there is a large VST with a significant increase in right ventricular pressure, as a result of it, there is a very low velocity flow. So this is known as a non-restrictive or so. That means there is a free flow from the large VST and producing equalization of pressure because of the significant RV pressure. And all other pulmonary stenosis, as we show you later, will have a high velocity flow. So There is an aortic override, VST, which can be right to left or bidirectional. RVOT obstruction, what we showed you, RVH, low velocity VSD flow, and there is a turbulence in the pulmonary artery with a high velocity flow because of a severe pulmonary stenosis. So they cover what is known as a Fallot's tetralogy. And as I told you, never be satisfied with one lesion. Now here you see another patient. There is a VSD, RVH you cannot see very well, but it was present. You see the aortic override. And then you see a bidirectional shunt flow from left to right and from right to left. So all the four criteria of a Fallot tetralogy are satisfied here. But when we go to this is now you see again, this is the pulmonary wall and the turbulence starts here. So that means there is an infundibular pulmonary stenosis because this is the pulmonary wall and turbulence starts from here. So, so all the four lesions, all the four things are satisfied in this case, RVH, VST, and aortic override and a severe pulmonary stenosis from an infundibular region. You see the turbulence starting here. And when you come to the apical view, you see there is a left-right shunt at the atrial level. This is the left atrium, this is the right atrium. So that means one more lesion has been added here. So that means this becomes a Fallot's pentalogy because besides the four things or so, a fifth thing has been added here. That is an ASD. So that means we see a Fallot's pentalogy. So that means the main summary is that you must see all structures very carefully. So you have seen Fallot's tetralogy, Fallot's pentalogy. Now this was a 19-year-old boy came to emergency in a very serious state, acidosis, septicemia, hypotension, oxynosis, and oxygen saturation 73%. And you see the child, the boy had a severe stenosis and the clubbing of the nails. Now, and this also showed a marked RVH. So this almost gave us a diagnosis that there has to be a right to left shunt, and that we have to demonstrate. Now see what happens here. This is a parasternal long axis view. You see there's a marked RVH, significant RVH. RV is enlarged. And you can see some sort of a jerky motion because of a paradoxical motion of the IVS. And you see the two things are almost, now you see there is no VSD here. There is no aortic override here. But here what we see, a severe RVH and an RV enlargement together with cyanosis and clubbing. And this you see, when we measured the RV, it was about 12 millimeters when the normal is less than 4. So this is sometimes what is known as an out of phase motion or a paradoxical motion because the posterior wall systole is here, a interventricular systole comes somewhere here. So the diastole comes there, here it comes there. So there is a complete disruption between systole and diastole. So what we see in a 2D, we also see in this M mode also. So this what we show. So till now we know that RV is enlarged and there is significant RVH. And this always shows you flattening of the interventricular septum. Always tells you that we are dealing with either a significant decrease RV pressure or a volume overload or so, just by seeing the septum. So then when now you see here, that is what I was telling you. This is the pulmonary wall. This is the arteriotic fundibular, and you see a membrane, a completely obstructing membrane. This in the RVOT, and this is the pulmonary wall, pulmonary artery. You see an obstructive membrane, and when you see a moving image, you see this. This is the obstructive membrane in the fundibular region. So this is producing, and you see here also significant RVH, and you see there is this patient has to have a infundibular stenosis because there is a membrane, obstructing membrane in the fundibular region. Then you see a severe pulmonary stenosis with a gradient of 77. So this patient had a severe pulmonary stenosis that, as we see till now, severe RVH, and when we came to the apical views, we give a contrast, and you see right to left shunt at the atrial level. So earlier, this used to be known as a triology fellow some old time, because why? There were three things: RVH, severe pulmonary stenosis, what we showed you, and right to left shunt through the AST because of an increase. It is either because of a patent foramen ovale or an ASD. So this becomes a tetralogy. But now sometimes they call it as a severe pulmonary stenosis with a right to left shunt at the atrial level. So you have seen all forms of a fellow tetralogy and should not forget them now. So this was what we discussed was a fellows. Very commonly you will see one of the commonest sinus disease. Now this was a 27-year-old female, dyspnea, cyanosis clubbing. We already showed you this slide, and you see there is a severe RVH. Severe RVH. Then we see the RV enlargement, and then we see a VSD. So VSD also. So a color flow mapping shows mainly a right to left flow. You see a right to left flow. You can see from the VSD. And this you see on a color flow mapping, a right to left shunt. So this was a case of what is known as a Eisenmenger syndrome or Eisenmenger complex. Eisenmenger is it is a group of shunt lesions with severe pulmonary artery hypertension leading to a bidirectional or a reversal of shunt. So that is known as Eisenmenger syndrome, and all other causes have been ruled out. And the most commonest cause is VSD. A lot of disturbance. So it can occur at any level also, but the most common is a ventricular septal defect. So a presence of a marked pulmonary artery hypertension.
Sorry, sir, there is a sound disturbance of Naresh Kumar. Sound disturbance.
But you can
Naresh
hear
Kumar.
me. You can hear
Naresh
me,
Kumar.
na?
No, sir. Someone is.
You can hear me.
No, sir, there is disturbance of sound. Someone is another is.
No, I
Naresh
am
Kumar.
it is not from my side.
No, sir, no, sir. Naresh Kumar, it's from Naresh Kumar, sir. Goel.
Because I am alone in the room, nobody else. So whenever there is a group of shunt lesions with severe of any septal defect, this is known as an Eisenmenger syndrome, and you must rule out any other associated lesion. So that is what we sometimes see many of these Eisenmenger syndromes. Now we come to
ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਪਲਾਨ ਪੈਸੇ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਹਿੱਲੀ ਸਾਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੱਸਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਸਾਰਾ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਸਾਰਾ ਗੇਮ ਹਿੱਲੀ ਹੈ
So this is not my language also. I never
Dr. Goel, please mute yourself.
ਅਨਿਲ ਵਿਜ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਦੇ ਤਾਲੁਕਾਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰੂਗਾ
this is not my this is not my language also, so I can't speak.
ਵੱਡਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਜਨੀਸ਼ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੰਡਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਰਜਨੀਸ਼ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਾਇਆ
So we have written here concordance versus discordance. We wanted to show you what is this. Concordance means when there is a normal ventricle, say atrioventricular concordance. Discordance is when there is a different a sort of a connection. So in the here the aorta rises entirely or in part from the right ventricle. So there is a ventriculo-arterial discordance. The pulmonary artery should not be arising from the right left ventricle also. And similarly, there is whenever there is a left ventricle PA is arising from that. So what happens in this? There is one circulation So there is a parallel circulation, what I'll tell you just now. So concordance is a normal connection. Discordance is a definite other connection. Now, for example, you see what happened now. Suppose you take only this circulation. All the inferior and the superior vena cava blood goes to the RA. From the RA it goes to the RV. From RV it goes to the aorta. Then the systemic circulation. So in that, this is taken into consideration. The systemic circulation only blood and the patient cannot survive. While on the right side, you see the pulmonary left side pulmonary vein goes into LA, LV, LV goes into PA and to lung get oxygenated. So if a flow is only venous, nobody can survive. So there has to be a connection between, at somewhere, either at atrial level, ventricular level, at a PDA level, so that the patient to survive is must have a connection. That is why nowadays, when the infant is born in an eco lab, they create an ASD if there is no ASD. So they create an ASD that. So this is what I was coming to this, that there are two parallel communications. So there must be some communication between them for the patient to survive. Otherwise, it is a very fatal and a serious condition. So in these cases, there is an atrioventricular concordance that the normal atria connected to normal ventricle, but the ventriculo-arterial discordance. That means the arteries are arriving differently. So we have to show them that we now remembered, it must have been told to you yesterday or any day, the great artery, when we say great artery, it is aorta or pulmonary artery, and aorta, great artery which bifurcates is a pulmonary artery, and a great artery which doesn't bifurcate, it is the aorta. So, and as I mentioned, there must be a presence of ASD and BSD. Now you see, this is normal. Now, if you have been doing a suprasternal view, you will see that you can see this ascending aorta are toward in the neck also, and the great vessels are branches are also coming from the neck from a suprasternal view. That means the aorta is always directed anteriorly, because it is directed anteriorly, as you see, while a pulmonary artery is always directed posteriorly, here like this. So you see, this is the thing. So what we have to demonstrate is whether the artery arising from the left ventricle bifurcates or not. We have to show this. Now this is way back 2003, one of the cases of Dr. Rakesh Gupta. You can see how much in the last 18 years they have changed. You see this patient so difficult to do. This is the left ventricle, however. This is the great artery. Now we do not know whether this is aorta or whether this is a pulmonary artery or what, or it may be modified view, we do not know. So because we only see that one great artery is arising from the left ventricle, and when you put the color on, you see it bifurcates into two. One branch. So this shows that the artery which was coming from the left ventricle is the pulmonary artery, because it bifurcates. You see one branch. So you have to see a branching also. And the same patient had an ASD also. You can see the ASD present. So one of our recent cases, now these are you have to do modified views. Now this is a part of the subcostal view. This is the right ventricle. This is the left ventricle. Now here we have modified the view to show the arteries also. And this is the atrial septum. Now here you see a VSD, you can see. This is the left ventricle, right ventricle, you can see a VSD. Now, the one artery is arising from the right ventricle, one artery is arising from the left ventricle. Now, we do not know which is which. Till now, we only know that the arteries are arising from normal ventricles and there's a VSD. Now, you put a color flow, you still don't know. Now this artery showed turbulence. That means it is narrowing, but still you don't know whether it is aorta or pulmonary artery. So you go on modifying your transducer till you see that now there is a branching scene. One branch goes this way, one branch goes this way. So that means this is the pulmonary artery which is arising from the left ventricle. Again, when we show you here, you see here there is no bifurcation seen, and this is the possibly the aorta coming from right ventricle, but we cannot know. And again, when we modify the transducer, you can see there is a bifurcation. So this confirms that the pulmonary artery is arising from the left ventricle, and this, as you show, there is a significant pulmonary stenosis with a 105 millimeters. So this patient had a VSD and a transposition of the great arteries and a narrowing also. So again, you see, again, I'm trying to show you the same thing. One artery coming here, no turbulence, one artery coming from here and a VSD, and this is coming from the left ventricle, and that is what. So that in a TGA, there is an atrioventricular concordance, ventricular arterial discordance, that means the arteries are not arising from the respective ventricles. So you demonstrate the abnormal connection between the ventricles and the great vessel. LV is connected to a great artery that bifurcates into two branches that we showed you in two different examples, that the artery which bifurcates is the pulmonary artery, and RV, that great artery that does not bifurcate. And there is the presence of ASD, VSD, and a PDA. So what we have shown you, a TGA, and you must show these things, and that is why you must practice a good subcostal view so that you can see these things. Now, this is, I'm only showing you, not that you will see anything also, but I'm telling you the definition of discordance and concordance. Now, here you see the RA is connected to LV. This means there is a atrioventricular discordance. That's because RA should connect to RV. So there is atrioventricular discordance, and the pulmonary arteries arising from left ventricle, showing that there is a ventricular arterial discordance. Similarly, LA is connected to LV, there is atrioventricular discordance, and aorta is connected to RV, which is known as an atrioventricular discordance. So this is a complete discordance example, and what we showed you in TGA was mainly a ventricular arterial discordance. Now you see this patient, you can see, I always tell you, forget whether I keep my LV on the left side or the right side, always see the wall which is attached to the more toward the apical side. So you see this is one wall, and this is one wall, and this is attached to the apical side. So this has to be the tricuspid wall, and the tricuspid wall is always attached to the right ventricle. Now these are the pulmonary veins. The pulmonary veins drain into the left atrium. So by this time, we can say that the left atrium is connected to the right ventricle. And so this is the right atrium to connect it here. But we have to show that yes, it is a pulmonary vein, and here you see the pulmonary veins coming. The pulmonary veins coming, and the pulmonary veins are joining into the left atrium, and this left atrium is connected to the right ventricle. That means there is both atrioventricular and ventricular arterial concordance, and we see the PA coming from the left ventricle. So this was so this is known as a congenitally corrected TGA, unless it is associated with a multiple other lesions. It is usually compatible with life, but usually they are attached with others, have some other associated lesions. So here it is, you can see that both we have shown is a concordance also. So again, this is again discordance versus concordance. I don't want to repeat it again. The next we very commonly sometimes see is an Easton's malformation. We are always going to show you some examples. Now, in Easton's malformation, there is an apical displacement of tricuspid wall, deflects septal mainly from the atrioventricular ring, from the annulus also. Let us come to the normal case again. Now this is a normal case. You see, this is the anterior leaflet. This is the septal leaflet. It is arising from a normal position, hardly about 5 to 8 millimeters from the mitral wall. So this is known to in an Ewson formation. The septal leaflet arises much toward the apical side. You see here, as you see here, see it is arising much from the apical side. So it is almost so this. So you can see this. This is the annular. This is the right atrium, left atrium, and you see this is the septal leaflet, which is arising much toward the apical side as compared. You can again see. Normally it arises just few millimeters from the mitral wall, but here you see it is arising. This is the mitral wall, and it is rising much anteriorly. So this is known as the septal displacement of the tricuspid wall toward the apex, and this was almost about 26 millimeters. The normal being about 8 millimeters per meter body square, or if you want to go by quantitative values, maybe about 10 to 15 millimeters or maximum that side where it is 26. So you measure from where the anterior leaflets are to the annular. So this is one feature of this. Then this enlarged anterior leaflet. Again, you see normal. This is the anterior leaflet, very normal small anterior leaflet. When we were doing only M mode echo many years back, we were taught or we were shown that wherever you put a transducer, you'll see a tricuspid valve. Think of an instance anomaly because it's so prominent. So here focus on the anterior leaflet, and here you see this anterior leaflet is what is known as a sail-like and markedly prominent. So in this view, you can see there is a marked septal displacement of the septal leaflet of the tricuspid wall toward the apex, and you see very small right ventricle, and this is the what is known as a very prominent anterior leaflet, known as a sail-like leaflet, as you see in a boat or so. Now, there is something known as atrialization of the proximal portion of the right ventricle. Now, again, I come to the same normal slide. The atrium is between the leaflets, or you can say the annulus, and the superior portion of the RA. This is the in any normal situation, the atrium is between these two places, between the annulus or the tricuspid leaflet and the superior. But what happens here? You see, the tricuspid is arising from there. So this is also a part of the right atrium. So this is known as an atrialized right ventricle. Atrialized right ventricle because this is like an atrium because it is situated between the tricuspid leaflets and the annulus. So it is because of the displaced tricuspid leaflets, this RV becomes divided into two parts, a normal RV and an atrialized right ventricle. I'll show you again. You see again, make image, always see image where you see a normal individual, only RA, RV, nothing else. Now here you see, so this is the atrialized portion, which is between the anatomical tricuspid leaflets and the portion of the tricuspid wall. So this is one, and this if you take this is still image, this is atrialized right ventricle, and this is small RV. This does not contribute too much in the RV output or so. So the more the atrialized right ventricle, the poorer is the prognosis. So by this time you should know what is atrialized right ventricle. This is true a right ventricle, a right atrium, and this is atrialized right ventricle because of this features also, as I told you. Now, tricuspid regurgitation. In a normal individual, the tricuspid regurgitation starts from where the leaflets meet. So this is the tricuspid leaflets. Now here in an Easton's formation, the tricuspid leaflets are somewhat displaced here. So there will be a marked apical origin of the tricuspid regurgitation. In a normal situation, remember where the tricuspid leaflets are here. And now here you see that there is a marked apical tricuspid regurgitation because the leaflets are meeting here. So because there is nothing, no leaflets are here. So there is an apical tricuspid regurgitation seen. Then there is a majority of the cases, there is an ASD, PFO, or majority of the cases also. For example, here you see there is an ASD. This is the left atrium because the pulmonary veins are draining into it, and there is an ASD, and the flow is going from left to right. So there is a associated lesion which is seen. So must see for all associated lesions. So there is an apical displacement of the septal leaflet. There is a sail-like prominent anterior leaflet. There is an atrialized right ventricle. There is a TR coming from the apical side that will be coming from here. And as we showed you, there can be an AST, BST, or a PDA and various RA volume overloads because of the tricuspid regurgitation. So these are the main anatomical features of this. Once I think the same batch, I don't know, when we showed you a case of this pericardial disorder, there was a pericardial effusion with a marked RV enlargement, and it turned out to be a Gibson's anomaly. Now, tricuspid atresia, again, you will see fairly commonly if you keep in mind. Now, remember two words, atresia and hypoplasia. Atresia is when any of the region is absent, it is known as atresia. Or when it is underdeveloped, it is known as hypoplastic. Every chamber must have three regions: inlet from which the blood comes in, apical region, and outlet region from where the blood goes out. So there, because if there is an inlet, there must be outlet. So tricuspid valve is absent. RV is hypoplastic. Why? Because normally the RV gets the blood from the RA. Now here the RV is completely deprived of blood from RA, but it gets some blood from the left ventricle, so it is hypoplastic. So when the RV is hypoplastic, the main chamber has to be the left ventricle, which shows a compensatory enlargement. So there is no communication between RA and RV. Remember, it is a eco-dense band. Eco-dense band because atresia means that it is absent. So when it is absent, there is no way that it should not communicate. So how does the patient survive? The blood which comes to the RA goes to the LV. So the right to left shunt has to be present at any of the level so that the patient can survive. Otherwise, no blood goes anywhere, so patient cannot survive even for a single minute or so. So I'll show you now. So what we have tried to show you, this is the RA. There is no connection between the RA and the RV. So there has to be an ASD. The blood goes to the LA, which receives the pulmonary venous blood. It goes through the main wall to the LV. From LV, some blood has to be oxygenated again because this becomes a deoxygenated blood from come to 75%. So there is usually a shunt at the right ventricular level, and then it goes to the aorta. You see, this is the venous blood. This is arterial blood. When it mixes, the oxygen separation becomes hardly 75%. So to survive, there should be a right to left shunt, and the blood and the blood goes into the aorta as well as there is a cyanosis. Now see, again see this time showing every time. Now this is a tricuspid valve. The RA is connected to RV because of a nice tricuspid valve. Now see here you see there is RV RA. There is a dense echo band, no connection, and a hypoplastic right ventricle. A very hypoplastic right ventricle, and this is the pulmonary vein. So this becomes the left atrium. This is becomes the left ventricle, and one prominent AV valve because the child or the boy has to survive So there has to be, so I'm just showing you here this thing. Now, all of you are all used to a different imaging plane. So this is your audience scan plane. You always keep your LV on one side and RV on the other side. You see here, there is no tricuspid wall. This is the right atrium. This is the left atrium. This is the tricuspid wall. And sorry, this is the mitral wall and goes into the main chamber. And this is the hypoplastic right ventricle. Now, as you can see here now, you see this is not a hypoplastic right ventricle, well-developed right ventricle. And here you see a hypoplastic right ventricle and a tricuspid atresia. And the same here. Now we have to show a right to left shunt. Otherwise, the diagnosis, you don't know how the child survived. Now, even in the era of a color flow mapping, because this was an adult patient, you see this is the pulmonary vein and it goes into the LV, but we could not show any significant a flow from right atrium to left atrium. Though the diagnosis is clear, but we have to demonstrate a right to left shunt. So despite the color flow mapping, we put a contrast echo and you see from the right atrium, the contrast goes to the left atrium, fills up the LV and the RV. You see better. This is the RA, and the LV. So that there has to be a shunt right to left, which we were not able to show from a color flow mapping. Now take another patient. Now this is a right atrium, and you see this multiple moving echo, which can be either an Eustachian wall or a Sherry network. Now this you see. Now here, if you see, you can't see an ASD. It appears as if the interatrial septum is intact, as you see here. And this is no tricuspid valve and a hypoplastic right ventricle and a prominent AV valve and the left ventricle. This is your scan plane, audience scan plane. You see a tricuspid wall, it is a sort of a station wall or a Sherry network. You can see this, a absence of a tricuspid wall, hypoplastic right ventricle, and main chamber. And here you see as if there is no septal defect or so. You see here, it looks completely intact. So now what we'll do is give a contrast, and just to before contrast to show you again, no apparent ASD looks like, and this is the right atrium, no tricuspid wall, hypoplastic and thing, and when you give a contrast, you see it goes from right atrium, left ventricle, and the right ventricle, you see. The right ventricle is also getting opacified. That means some of the blood contrast from the left ventricle goes to the right ventricle, and you can see a contrast echo this. So although we were not able to see this by color flow mapping, but you see a contrast shows a right atrium and a filling up of the left atrium through the right to left ASD, left ventricle, and you see a nice color flow mapping, a sort of a contrast in the right ventricle. Always see for associated lesions, never get. Now this patient had many lesions, but will not show you all. We can see a ventricular septal defect was present here. So, and this ventricular septal defect. This patient had other lesions also, and you see a turbulence at the region of the VST, and then you can see a high. This is known as a, now there is a 66. This is more of a restrictive VST, in which you see a high velocity flow as compared to the fellows you saw, hardly 1 or 2 meters. So in summary, tricuspid atresia, absent tricuspid wall, hypoplastic right ventricle, large left ventricle, one prominent AV wall, which is the mitral wall because the tricuspid wall is absent. ASD or VSD, which was shown to you, ASD was present, VSD was present, and any other associated lesions can be seen. So, must keep this AVI images in your mind. Now, this I'm keeping this This slide I'm showing from a sentimental point of view. All hearts with atrioventricular connection to one main ventricular chamber. That means both the atrioventricular valves connection is connected to one main chamber. It can be LV, RV, or anything. Or in other words, a chamber receiving both a tricuspid and mitral valve. Now, see this. Actually, why I brought this? Because he was the nephew of one of his doctors, and I first saw him when he was about 6 years of age. When he was 6 years of age, then the first time I saw him, and you see here, there is a one AV wall. They are virtually kissing each other in diastole, and there is no interventricular septum. This is an accessory chamber also. And when you put a color flow mapping, now you see flow from both the atria is going uninterrupted and mixing into the left ventricle. Last I saw this boy was when he was about 34 years of age. He was married. After that, of course, I could not have a contact, maybe possibly for unfortunate reasons. So you see again you see there is no interventricular, there is a no interventricular septum. Sometimes it can be confused with a very large VST, and you see the both AV walls are opening in one chamber. And here you see this is the AV walls, blood going from this into the one chamber. And this is the time when I saw him when he was about 30, 33 years of age. And you see the same thing, and they associated severe pulmonary stenosis. And you see here a turbulence here and a pulmonary stenosis. At that time, there was no treatment in these cases. So now very difficult. I would not want to detail, but anomalous pulmonary venous correction, when all pulmonary veins drain into the right atrium or any other place, it is known as a total anomalous pulmonary venous connection. Majority of symptoms before 1 year of life, and 80% die if left untreated. A partial is one or more, but not all show anomalous connection. There is a marked enlargement of the right atrium. Why? Because the right atrium is receiving blood from the IVC, SVC, and also from the anomalous pulmonary veins. So because they are draining into the right atrium, so there is a marked enlargement of the right atrium, like an ASD. There is a marked enlargement of the right ventricle. There is a small left atrium, because left atrium normally gets blood from the pulmonary veins. But here the pulmonary veins are not draining into the left atrium. So like you saw it in tricuspid atresia, that RV was hypoplastic, there is a small LA. This is something difficult. This I'll show you. There is an echo-free space behind the LA where all the pulmonary veins drain. So you suspect when there is a cyanosis plus cardiac failure in infancy, unprominent cardiac murmur, large RV and RA with a small LA and ESD. Small LA, remember this thing. Now you see here, all pulmonary veins not connected to the LA, total anomalous. All pulmonary veins join together to form a venous chamber. This venous chamber is connecting into the right atrium. Now incidence is very less. So this was a 9-year-old child who came to us many times before also, but for last 4 months he had a mild cyanosis on lip cell exertion, and when medical attention was shown, and he had an RBBB. Now you see, I'll show you this. RV is enlarged, RA is enlarged, LV is there, small LA, ASD. Now see this thing. There is a chamber behind the left atrium where my this arrow is there. There is a chamber behind the left atrium, which is a venous confluence. Again, I will come back to this. Now see this image. There is nothing behind the left atrium. Left atrium normal side, there is no venous chamber, nothing. From where it goes. Now here you see this one. This one you see here all the pulmonary veins are going, and there is an AST and RU. So none of the pulmonary veins are draining in LA, and the LA is small. So there are different views to take it, both the subcostal view also, and then we show the abnormal connection. Now you see, the none of the blood goes into the left ventricle, but goes into the right atrium also. So what this is all the venous confluence. So what this surgeon does, establishes unobstructed communication between the pulmonary vein confluence and LA. So because the pulmonary veins are not connected to LA, so they try to create a communication between LV and PV and LA and close the AST. For example, here. Now, can you see this? This is the venous confluence. Behind the left atrium, the ASD has been closed, and they have produced a gap communication between the venous confluence and the left atrium. And you can appreciate the left atrium was small as compared to the RA. So you see, here you can see much better the venous confluence behind the LA, and you see there is a communication made here between this confluence and the LA, so that the blood can now go from here to LA and into the LV. So here you see now the blood is now the blood we have taken a different view. This view is just to show that these are the pulmonary veins which are now draining into the left ventricle, left atrium through this confluence. And this modified view is taken to show that this blood is now going to the left ventricle. So remember, this venous confluence is now going to the LA, and the blood from LA is now going to the LV or so. So the main echo features are, again, we have told you everything, but remember, it is an emergency. Whenever you get a cardiac failure in infancy and a large RVRA and a small LA with ASD, you look for it and send the patient immediately elsewhere. So these are some of the normal causes of the cyanosis as per age or so. This you must be having with you. And this is just I got from somebody that this is known as aortopulmonary connection. This is the aorta, this is the pulmonary artery, and there is a connection between the aorta and the pulmonary artery known as an aortopulmonary connection. Best seen also from the suprasternal view. So you see a connection between the aorta and the known as AP window, aortopulmonary window. So in summary, please be patient. Don't be in a hurry. Many a times we have to call the patient twice or so that again we want to do it. Evaluate clinically, ECG, X-ray, chest, they're important because once there is a pulmonary oligemia, it gives you some diagnosis of severe pulmonary stenosis or whether they are hyper oligemic. Know the basic anatomy and hemodynamics of all these conditions, what you have seen. Make a small note. Fellow tetralogy, 4 things. Views. Ephens, 4 things. Views. Just like this. Have lot of patient, good sedation, and as must have been discussed by Dr. Gupta yesterday, go stepwise. Don't go. Start from the subcostal. You go stepwise. Always see for a right to left shunt. Always show. Try to see for multiple defects and use contrast echo if need be. Now, any questions from your side? We are only showing you some of the common things also. Now, what happens nowadays? I'll tell you, I will be very practical with you. Now, the patients and the doctors have become very sort of a wise. Now, these patients, many patients come with an infants. They are 6 months old, 1 month old cyanosis. So what we do, we just recalled it for our clinical interest. We don't charge them because we know that ultimately they will have to go to a cardiac center. pediatric center. So we record it for our purposes. Then we send the patient without charging anything, and then we correlate how much right, how much wrong we were from those patients. So this summary will always help you when you do your pediatric echoes. Now, any questions from your side?
Any delegates would like to ask some question? You can unmute yourself
I
and
know it is a difficult subject. Please try to read now, because we have tried to show you an AVI images. Now try to read these lesions a bit so that it forms a lasting impression. And as we have told you repeatedly, anytime you want to see any of these AVI images again, please let us know or let Dr. Gupta know also. So please always see this. If there is a gap of 1 month between your this talk and your reading a textbook, it will be a problem.
Excuse me, sir.
yeah, please go ahead.